Steve, I don't know if you caught that, but we're ready to go.
Yeah, now he is. Okay. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the City Commission regular meeting. We are virtual only tonight. Today is Wednesday, October 16th, and we are going to convene the meeting and do the roll call.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Rocky Smith is excused tonight. Commissioner Adam Marl.
Here.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
Present. So I can see the flag, but do we want to suspend the flag salute or do we want to do the flag salute?
Suspend.
Okay, Mike? Okay, we're suspending the flag salute for tonight since we have no flags. Tonight, under item number 3, we have ceremonies and proclamations, and seems like it's come around too fast already this year. Since I spent the morning at Oregon City High School, they reminded me about the the rivalry game. So I will read the proclamation. So this is the proclamation for the Oregon City West Linn Rivalry Day. Whereas the cities of Oregon City and West Linn wish to recognize the efforts of their community members to create and maintain a positive family environment where children can learn the value of constructive competition. And whereas the cities of Oregon City and West Linn value tradition and history as essential parts of their communities, and whereas Oregon City High School and West Linn High School, formerly known as Union High School, have competed valiantly in the sport of football continuously since 1921, except during the pandemic of 2020. And whereas on November 1st, the teams representing these schools will renew their annual rivalry for the third time, as this is the longest continuously played rivalry west of the Mississippi and therefore worthy of recognition. And whereas the City Commission of Oregon City desires that the Pioneers again defeat the Lions, and the City Council of West Linn desires that the Lions again beat the Pioneers. Now, therefore, we, the City Commission of Oregon City and the City Council of West Linn, hereby recognize and command all, and I don't know about that commanding part, all community members who have participated in this annual Gridiron Classic and support the efforts of the current teams by proclaiming November 1st, 2024 to be Oregon City West Linn Rivalry Day. We recommend that in the spirit of the day that all community members wear the clothing of their appropriate colors and refrain from crossing the river unless business requires until game time. And I will sign this when we are back in the office. All right, next on our agenda, we have Linda, are you here for public comment? Linda Basinger, can you hear me?
I believe she's here for the CIC portion of the meeting.
Oh, okay, all right. Do we have anybody online that's here for his public comments?
No, we do not.
Okay, and we had somebody that was texting me during our work session about getting here. So if they get online and they can figure out how to get in here, we'll hear them at a later date. Okay, so we have a presentation from the Clackamas County District Attorney's Office, and we have DA Mr. Wentworth here, and we have Deputy Attorney Mr. Bill Stewart.
Well, thank you. Chief Davis reached out to Bill and me and mentioned that this council would like an update on deflection and our efforts to address substance abuse in Clackamas County. Bill is the Deputy District Attorney in charge of our program to set up and run, there are multiple phases of it, a deflection program, a conditional discharge program, and then ultimately, if necessary, the conviction process for people who are in possession of illicit drugs. This has, as you probably know, been a political process, a frustrating process for us because of that, but we got through it. And I knew from the very beginning it would be successful because Bill had done such a good job in setting up essentially the same program before ballot measure 110 went into effect. And as Bill will explain, this is a process that you can't just deal with drug addiction alone. There are other life issues that are attendant to drug use. Crime is part of that, and I don't have to tell Chief Davis the interconnection between substance abuse and the crime that we see. But this is good. This now gives us another tool in the toolbox to address everything that we see, from homelessness to crime to mental illness. This is yet another thing that we can use to set people on the right track. And so I'm very proud of the work that Bill has done. And I want to leave it to him to go into the details of the program. If there are other issues or little other things you want to talk about the criminal justice system, I'm here for that as well. But you really want to hear from Bill about this because he's the subject matter expert.
So I'm hoping that Bill will explain for the community, in case they haven't read all of the bills and things, of which substances are now back on the docket in terms of being criminalized, because I think there was a lot of confusion with Measure 110. So where we are right now.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, John. Am I able to share my presentation for folks?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, but before I do that, I'm going to try to go fairly quickly through my PowerPoint. I want to leave as much time as possible for questions so that I can hear what and try to answer the issues and specific concerns you might have. So let me see if I can bring up my PowerPoint.
John, is that your regular background, or are you still at work?
Unfortunately, I'm still at work.
Is that visible to everyone?
It isn't now.
Okay, great. Again, my name is Bill Stewart. I'm a deputy district attorney with the DA's office. I am in charge of developing and executing our essentially the House Bill 4002 process. It's called the deflection program. I want to give you a little brief background to kind of touch on some of the issues that the mayor touched on. So let's see if I can go to the slideshow. I'm having trouble getting to, there we go. So obviously 110 came into effect in 2020. That decriminalized small amounts, residue amounts of hard drugs. So meth, heroin, cocaine, fentanyl are the main ones that we see. And below a certain, for fentanyl and heroin, it was 1 gram. For cocaine and for methamphetamine, it was 2 grams. That was no longer a crime. It was a violation, like kind of in effect, a speeding ticket under 110. The piece of the graph that happened from that time on, of course, as you're all aware, fentanyl became a much bigger issue in our state, and our overdoses exploded. I don't think there's any other way to say it. Throughout Oregon, we've experienced record levels of overdose, and much of it, in my judgment, kind of tied to the use of fentanyl. But decriminalization took away our ability to kind of try to impact those folks who were carrying possession amounts. And so as a result of that, this recent short session, there was a compromise that came up with the Bill 4002 program. And in my experience, it's a very unique approach. It gives each county the opportunity to program that fits the needs of that county. When John came to me, I think it was in March or April, and said, hey, great news, there's an opportunity here to do something different. After I was kind of taken aback, I thought in terms of, we're not starting from a blank slate. We have with our community court program and with the partnerships we developed around homelessness and working with our partners, folks you're very well aware of, Love One, Father's Heart, and Fourth Dimension Recovery. We want to build on that same approach to this new opportunity with House Bill 4002. And so when we were spoken to about this by the political leadership down at the legislature, the word what I heard was that we could be as creative as we could to fit the specific needs of our county. And then they would try to look and identify best practices statewide. It's my understanding that 26 of the 36 counties have essentially filed and accepted money from the state to develop their programs. Some have started on September 1st when the new law was in place. We certainly did. Other counties are still working on their projects. The reason that, I should provide this, and I'll touch on this again. The legislature created 4 what they call pathways to treatment. And it's 4 levels of intervention for the individual, depending on where they're at, what their prior criminal history looks like, what we think we need to do to make an impact. The first level is diversion, or they call it deflection. That is a pre-charge diversion. So that means that the case has not been filed with a court.
Does it have sidebar stuff on there?
People eligible for that are able to give it, to take advantage of that and engage in treatment.
PowerPoint and take out the sidebar so that the picture is bigger. Done.
Let's see if I can do this. And so the second level after deflection goes to conditional discharge. That's more like a Dewey diversion. So there, the case has been filed, the possession of a controlled substance, an unclassified amount is that residue amount up to those levels where it becomes a Class A. And then if they're successful, that charge goes away. They never have to plead guilty, actually. They accept terms of probation. If they're successful, it goes away. The third level is essentially kind of like our regular misdemeanor charges are, where they have to enter a plea of guilty. They're found guilty of it, and then they're under formal probation. And finally, there's an opportunity, if they fail that, they can be revoked and under formal probation, serve up to 180 days in jail as the most serious consequence. Although at that point, they're eligible for day-for-day credit for inpatient treatment. The focus of all 4 levels is to address the drug abuse that they're suffering, and then trying to find and really bring, it's not just handing somebody an idea, hey, here's a list of places to go get treatment. We want to guide them and support them, and in cases, push them into treatment. All of the levels are going to require that sort of engagement. I'll talk more about that as we move down the show, the slide deck here. So I mentioned that we built this on the model that would be used to address homelessness. And I think you guys are probably very aware, we've had some good success in Clackamas County on a broader basis in addressing homelessness. Now, I know some folks aren't completely convinced of these numbers, but based on the numbers that I've seen, we've housed a lot of people in the last 3 to 4 years. We haven't finished our job. We have a lot more work to do, but we've had some real success with the partnership between the criminal justice system, law enforcement, and our partners, the folks like Love One, Father's Heart, 40. We like to call it the push-pull system. We're the push, we being the criminal justice system, and we're trying to help direct these folks into the work that our partners are trying to do to get these folks off the street and into treatment. So that said, this is where I've touched on this kind of push-pull idea that we've worked at essentially since COVID came. We started our LEAD program in 2019 and then just fed into these issues. One of the critical parts that I know you guys are very interested in is the role of our community court program. We've had our community court program since about 2005 in Clackamas County, but over the past 7 to 10 years, it's really become a focus on homelessness. And that court has served to be a critical piece to successfully addressing homelessness and getting these folks off the street. And we've taken that and now moved it into our House Bill 4002 program. We're calling it Impact Court. So I'll talk more about that, but we've taken the model that we've been working with community court and the partnerships, and now we moved it into this new realm. So this next slide, I won't go into a great deal because it's probably hard for you guys to see, but it talks about those 4 levels I mentioned. The first one is deflection. That is where it's a pre-charge diversion. And there, you might be asking, well, how does someone be successful in that? Here's what we're requiring in deflection, and for that matter, in conditional discharge. A, that they connect with an outreach person. B, that they get what's called an ASAM evaluation. That is a formal evaluation of the level of substance abuse. see that they engage with a treatment provider to follow up on those treatment recommendations, and they maintain that level. What we're looking for is that they're substantially engaged at all three levels of that. And that's what we're building. And that's true both for deflection and conditional discharge. Again, the focus here is not to have somebody list kind of like Major 110 did, like, oh, here's some options for you. Go, good luck in finding yourself treatment. We are going to work hand in glove with our partners for outreach, peer mentorship, and the treatment team to get these folks engaged and follow through on treatment.
Hey, Bill?
Yes.
This slide's pretty important. Can you move your cursor down to the bottom of the screen and see if we can make that larger? There, yeah, go to the left.
He has to get rid of the side panel.
Yeah,
So that
okay.
that's his presentation.
I think if you hit the computer right next to the slide for minimizing and enlarging,
Okay.
right above, yep, down to the right.
Oh, you got it, I think. Didn't you?
Looks like a
There
little.
you go.
There it is. Yep, you got it.
Okay. For some reason now I've got a different screen up here on there, but
That's what she's supposed to have.
okay. So this is, John, here's where you wanted to get to, this slide right here. Did you want to say something about that, John?
It's just that I think visually that helps explain what you're walking through. So I thought that would be helpful.
Okay. So we look at it as 4 different levels. For the folks that come into it with very little background, with no other charges, they start at deflection. If they're not eligible for deflection, or if they fail deflection, they would move into conditional discharge. If they're not successful there or not eligible for that, then it becomes a formal conviction and probation. And ultimately, if they're not successful at probation, it becomes a revocation. Now, in all 4 levels, what we've learned through our efforts to deal with homelessness in community court is we try not to ever give up on people. We try to continue to work very aggressively with them and engage our partners. And I want to do that at all 4 of these levels. That's our long-term goal. Of course, we'll have formal probation to help support that, but the goal is to get these folks into treatment and ensure that they're successful in the process. There is an expungement process that happens at the end that's part of the law if they're successful. Success for us is at the deflection level. It's the engagement that I talked about, first with the mentor, outreach person, then the ASAM, and then engagement and treatment, and show us over essentially 4 to 6 months that you're engaged in that. We're not necessarily asking that they be completed at the end. We want them formally engaged. And what that means then is that case will never get charged at deflection. Similarly, with conditional discharge, they've been charged, they would agree to the terms of probation, and then they go through a process where, again, they engage with the outreach teams, they do an ASAM, they get engaged in treatment and show us anywhere, again, from 4 to 6 months that they're engaged in that program. If they're successful, at that point, the case gets dismissed and goes away and the rest gets expunged. And so that's the broader process that we're working at. Go to the next slide here.
If you just click on the screen, it'll go forward.
Okay. There we go. So the process we're following here is unique to Clackamas County. Our process starts with law enforcement. Law enforcement makes the initial contact out in the street. If they have probable cause to believe the new crime, which is possession of a controlled substance, unclassified, then they can cite, and if they may arrest. But at that point, then the case comes to us being the DA's office. We make a determination whether or not they're eligible for either conditional discharge or the deflection. And then we're looking for a role to develop called the program navigator. We don't have that yet, although we're finally getting close. That person will be working on the supply or the treatment side and outreach and trying to reach these people before their court date. We're trying to bring everybody into our impact court program that will meet the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of the month at the courthouse at 9 in the morning. And then those folks will then, our treatment teams, once they engage with these people, will report back through our navigator, and we'll then provide that information to the court. Our partners are roughly in 3 different areas: outreach, primarily for the homeless folks, mentors, and then the actual treatment teams. We have had two impact court sessions. Again, this started on September 1st. Our first session was 9/24. Our second court was 10/10. I'm going to go through the numbers here in just a moment, but what I will tell you is that it's been, number one, our law enforcement folks have a real appetite for trying to address what they're seeing on the street by citing these folks. So we've seen a significant number of cases. We've seen more cases than I expected we would. The second piece of good news is that our partners, who primarily come from what's called the burn teams, behavioral health resource networks, which were actually funded by Measure 110, have, in the most part, completely joined us in this partnership. We have anywhere from 14 to 17 treatment outreach peer mentor folks at court each session, and they're working with these folks and surrounding them. And we've had some pretty exciting starting points already with some very challenged folks. The other thing I'll note is that the folks we're seeing in our court are the exact people we wanted. The folks that in some cases have some good criminal history or significant history. They are significantly addicted. In many cases, they're homeless, and they're the exact kind of folks we're trying to reach. They're the exact kind of folks we're seeing on our streets. And this gives us additional tool, as John said, to address that. So a quick run through for our numbers. This is as of today. We've had 68 cases submitted to our office. We've had 19 of those have been offered deflection or have begun in deflection. 28 of them are eligible for conditional discharge. We've had 8 that were not eligible because they had other charges. So that could be other misdemeanor charges or other felony charges. With those, we're not worried about trying to bring somebody into deflection. They've got other challenges to look through the regular court session. We've looked here at the demographics. It's been predominantly male and Caucasian folks that we're coming into contact with. I would note that for me, kind of the most interesting piece, I guess I'll say it this way, the most exciting piece is the engagement that our partners have been making with these folks. I expected to have some challenges with that. And I got to tell you, it's been really rewarding and gives me great hope that we're going to make a real impact on this population. We're learning how to run this system more efficiently. We're about to start with our new program navigator where we can actually do more outreach on the street. The other piece is going to add what's called a social referral capacity so that we can just give if a law enforcement officer or one of our partners finds somebody that they think is a good fit, they can just reach out to us. It doesn't have to have a case to do it. When we ran our lead program, that was a key part of getting these folks into the system. And so we're looking forward to that as well. And then the next piece is right now, it takes a while for us to get the information and then get back out to these folks. We recognize that. It's a big county. We wanted to start with something we could handle efficiently. As we grow, we're going to try to get outreach teams with our law enforcement partners, not necessarily 24/7, but when somebody from OCPD runs into somebody that clearly needs help, they can reach out and have somebody come right out and work with that person and then feed them into the program. So that's the direction we're headed. Any questions or comments you wish me to respond to?
A bunch. I'll ask a few.
Go ahead, Mr. O'Donnell.
What's the source of funding for all these resources that you're prepared to dedicate? Is it provided by the state, or is that the county level, or is it anticipated the city will have to participate?
So the money for setting up the program as part of House Bill 4002 and supporting legislation, we received just over $1 million. But that's funding the work in the DA's office, our program navigators, and some other supportive actions. Measure 110, the pot money, is already funding those treatment resources. So I don't believe there's any additional monies coming out of the county. There's certainly been no ask of the folks from the cities to fund this. John, have I misstated any of that?
No, that's accurate.
Commissioner, we're trying to build on what we have and make it more efficient. One of the big questions we have is, do we have enough treatment beds, whether that's outpatient or inpatient? We don't know. We're going to try to find that out because we're going to try to really push hard to get these folks into treatment. And then we're going to be going.
Offenders brought into custody or before maybe. And then there's, you refer to conditional discharge. So it looks to me as if the offender almost gets at least two tries to utilize the program. Did I interpret that correctly?
I think in general, yes. And actually, I would suggest to you that they get more than 2 tries because we want them engaged. And so we're going to essentially ratchet up the level of push on them. Conditional discharge is the one without a charge. Next level is conditional discharge, or excuse me, deflection is the first level. Its second step is that. And that's based on our looking at the factors that we say this person's eligible or not. And if they fail at the first level, yes, they do move up the ladder.
It did look like from your chart that individual can be in custody, serving, and could elect at some point during the course of that sentence to elect that they want to enter the deflection program?
No, what we've decided is that if you have other charges pending or other cases, you're not going to be eligible for deflection.
Okay.
Deflection is meant to minimize the amount of jail or any jail if we can. And so at that point, they go straight into conditional discharge. And if they have more serious charges or other cases, conditional discharge is really not viable for them. So we're trying to avoid that. If they're in jail for any significant amount of time, they're not being offered deflection and probably not conditional discharge.
Okay, I must have misunderstood because it was like the 4th category talked about initial probation.
That's with someone who's worked their way up. So it's still on that one charge, that
Okay.
PCSU. It's just that we're literally not giving up on these folks. We're not going to say, hey, it didn't work, go back and do your drugs. We're going to work hard to keep moving them up. And if we have to, we'll move them all the way to that 4th level.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? Adam, you look like you're about ready to say something. But
Well, I just, first of all, I want to commend the DA and his team for everything they had to go through in order to make this get to where we are. Professionally, I was assigned to follow this, and I sat in on those Clackamas caucus calls with legislators and got to watch those, our friends and colleagues on the grant committee at the state level realized that if they had denied Clackamas counties, then they, in keeping with that rationale, they should have denied a whole lot of other applications as well. And so I just want to give huge props to the DA's office for their work on that. I guess one thing I am curious about, having followed this, is I'm wondering, have you guys encountered any Boyd-Hubble instances yet? And do you think that the fixes that were in House Bill 4002 were sufficient to deal with concerns over that precedent?
Well, in the realm of 4002, Boyd-Hubble deals with delivery. So when someone's selling drugs to another person, that is not a 4002 situation. So 4002 is for someone who's simply possessing a user amount of methamphetamine, heroin, fentanyl, that sort of thing. The Boyd-Hubble fix, Boyd and Hubble are the names of 2 criminal cases that essentially made it impossible for law to deal with the delivery of drugs in a meaningful way. And Commissioner Morrill, just this week, I saw the statistics on it, and we haven't seen a giant bump yet in the crackdown on delivery cases. We expect that we will, but law enforcement in part is having to ramp that back up, that approach, because that tool was taken away from us for so long. So and the reason I'm so confident in that we're going to see this bump, what I shared with a group, I was part of a legislative group in Bend, among law enforcement officials, the challenge has been that with ballot measure 110, there was a dramatic increase in demand in Oregon for drugs because people could come and use drugs.
just for the record, Commissioner Smith has joined us. Mike?
Yeah, 2 questions. I'm a little confused as somebody escalates up from diversion. Does that escalation happen when they're not living up to the conditions of whatever level they were on? Or is that like a second offense that they're arrested for moves them up?
It's the first one. It's where if they're in deflection and they fail to age effectively or drop out of treatment, we're then to charge the case in additional discharge with additional sanctions that help push them in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is the community court that we're spinning up, is this taking the place of what you're doing for Oregon City cases, or are we doing something different and we're still going to take advantage of your court that you have set up?
I think I will leave that for Sean Davis.
Yeah, Sean, did you want to jump in on that? Or, yeah, I mean,
can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Our court will be very similar to Clackamas County's. However, we're not going to take any drug charges. We're not going to take it's going to be more focused on the crimes that the DA's office can't prosecute, such as like our municipal code. So if you have someone maybe doing some sort of municipal code violations, drinking in public, some of those other ones of obscene conduct and that kind of stuff, that's going to be where that is. Or the lower level thefts that we prosecute, criminal trespass that we don't necessarily send to the DA's office, that's what that focus is going to be on. But we also can send cases to them because some of our defendants will have multiple charges. Some are prosecutable in Clackamas County. And so we'll try to get it into one court system, but it's going to be operating very similar.
Okay. But the drug cases are staying with the county system.
Correct.
Great. Thank you.
yeah, we're trying to fill the portion that doesn't necessarily go down to Clackamas County that we deal with, that the judge deals with regularly at the municipal court level that we're responsible for.
I have a question. So, Bill, you mentioned that one of the main goals was to get people, off the street, into housing and into treatment. And I guess my experience with this has been probably for every 2 people or 3 people you get into housing, we have some backsliding occurring and they come out of the housing. So what is the rate of people who have been helped who have stayed housed for more than 6 months?
I think it's pretty good. I would have to that's not my area of expertise. I could get an answer for you through H3S or H3S who runs those things. My perception in dealing with, again, the folks at Love One, it's been really strong. I think our backsliding, and there are some of those folks, are somewhere between 10 and 15% is my sense of that. Those who have slipped out of housing are those folks that we had the most attention to and concern about cause the most problem on our streets.
So is that they go into transitional housing first? Because obviously people who have been out in the street for a long time, not really capable at this point in time in their lives of moving from a tent to an apartment.
The short answer.
So is there a step by which they go through like transitional, then maybe getting into some permanent housing, or what's the steps?
Well, it's going to be individual to the person, but essentially you're correct, quite right. If someone's been long-term on the streets for more than a year or even much longer, transitional housing is the best way to go. So Love One runs the motel program here in the county. It's kind of our most effective process. What we're also finding is that there are certain treatment beds that they're called stabilization beds that can be this kind of step over this, where you first get them off the street and do detox. And then we've got another group that will come in and say, okay, we'll give them stabilization while we then set up treatment, because we're trying to get these folks off. Yeah. It's always a tough challenge, and it's going to be individual to the person.
Okay. Mr. O'Donnell.
Just a curiosity, if I understood correctly, those engaged in distribution, or commonly called dealers, would not.
So we could read tiny on that chart that we could see.
He should already have a copy. If he doesn't, okay. I'm going to send it his way.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That would be fantastic. Thank you so much for coming, both of you. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to hearing about more.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for this opportunity.
All right, so let's move on to our next item, which is review and adoption of the consent agenda, which we have the minutes of June 11th, 2024. And I'm going to ask Mr. Mitchell if he has any wordsmithing to do tonight on this.
No, I don't.
Okay. May we have a motion, please?
Move to adopt the consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Wiley, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Morrow,
Aye.
and Mayor Denise Mc.
Aye. I
Motion.
want you to know that was done with a lot of love. I made that comment. All right, next on our agenda is item number 8. We have public hearings and we do not have any tonight. Although we do have a first reading of an ordinance under item 9, which is the first reading of ordinance number 241009, amending the Oregon City Municipal Chapter 2, Section 30, Sub 030 to adjust membership requirements of the Citizen Involvement Committee. And we have Mr. Lehman and Hannah, there you are. Thank you, Ms. Schmidt here for that. City Manager Conkle.
I'll go ahead and turn this over to Hannah. Go ahead and give the presentation.
Yes. So on October 7th, at the most recent Citizen Involvement Committee, the CIC had decided to amend their city code chapter that specifically stipulates that members shall reside, work in, or own property or a business within the neighborhood association in which they reside. The chair of the Citizen Involvement Committee is also with us tonight, Linda Basinger, and she had received feedback from the Two Rivers Neighborhood Association that because of that specific membership stipulation, that Rivers Neighborhood Association has trouble in having interest in CIC representatives because a lot of their participation that they receive with the neighborhood association is from a lot of business owner. Since Two Rivers is located, the neighborhood association takes up a large portion of Main Street. So the CIC is proposing to amend their bylaws to previously it was that only residents were allowed. They're asking to amend for members to reside, work in, own property, or a business within the area.
Are there any questions of staff? I have several, but I'll wait for my colleagues to go. None? Okay, well, I'll ask mine. So back in the good old days, there were more people who lived in the Two Rivers neighborhood, and it does extend out closer to on Clackamas River Drive. So it goes out that far. There are residents who live there. I don't know what our outreach has been to that. But with that, I will say, if we could do more outreach, I'm not objecting to this. What I'm getting at is that most of the bylaws from all of the neighborhood associations already specify that you can live, own, or work within that particular boundary of that neighborhood. This one, can't recall why that was put in the charter, that our municipal code that way, that they had to be living there. But that, as far as I know, is the only one. And maybe it's because it is the overall group that deals with mostly residential folks. And so maybe that is why they did that. My one question is that with regard to the neighborhood associations that I'm familiar with, we do ask for documentation that they actually own a business or work in a business or, do something within that boundary. Not that we don't disallow participation from other people who are outside the neighborhood, but in terms to be a member, most of the bylaws that I have reviewed say that those things are required. Not that they have to be required, but I mean that they have live, work, or own. So I think that it would behoove us to follow a policy that they document that they do live, own, or work just for the neighborhood association's purposes, so that they know that. I've been to a number of Two Rivers neighborhood meetings, and I will say there's a lot of very nice, well-meaning hanger-oners who attend those meetings, but they do not live, work, or own property in that area. And so I think in terms of working, it can't be like, okay, I'm a landscaper and I work on this property, and then later on I come back and I don't work there, and then I come back and then I work, that type of thing. So I mean, like if they work at Mountains, at Lithia Subaru, that's working there. if the owner of Lithia Subaru wants to be on, be considered for the CIC, then obviously they own the property. So that's kind of what I'm getting at. So there's a little check and balance here that I would definitely like to see. And most of the neighborhood associations already do this. So that's all I wanted to add to this.
And I want to emphasize as well that it was brought up in the Citizen Involvement Committee meeting that the neighborhood associations do have their own bylaws and they have certain stipulations, a lot of which were created based off the CIC bylaws and the city code. And once this is approved, if it is by the city commission and it goes through its final second reading, then I would make sure to contact all of the active neighborhood association chairs to let them know that those amendments have been made, in case if the neighborhood associations need to make any amendments or wish to make any amendments to their specific bylaws.
So let me make a polite correction. Most of the neighborhood associations were in existence before the CIC existed. So we're going back to prior to 96. So that may not be the case where the CIC's bylaws are the same as or similar to neighborhood association. They came after. So I don't have any objection to that, but there's a long timeline in terms of some of the neighborhood associations that were there. They were reconstituted again and reauthorized in 96 going forward. And so some of the proclamations are signed by Dan Fowler. Some of them are signed by Alice that I have seen. So just want to make that little correction. Does anybody have any objection to making this request? I think it's pretty straightforward, and I think it would help get more participation. And we can always do a better job of outreaching to this neighborhood. And I have to say, that this neighborhood was sort of the baby of Byron Boyce, and he passed away a few years back, and that's when they sort of lost some of their residential folks because he brought other people that lived around him on Clackamas River Drive, and may he rest in peace. So, do we have further discussion, or is there a motion?
Just to clarify, we're not changing anything, right?
No, I'm just saying that most of the neighborhood associations requires documentation that the person lives, works, or whatever in that particular area. So can we have a please?
I move to approve the reading of ordinance number 24-1009.
Second.
I'll second. Bill?
Ordinance number 24-1009, an ordinance of the state amending OCMC 2.30.030 to adjust membership requirements for the Citizen Involvement Committee.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith.
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
and Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
So, yeah, we'll have the second reading of this at our next regularly scheduled meeting. Do we want to take B, or do we want to take care of it? Do we think we're going to have a giant discussion about D? I wanted to keep B and C for the sort of the end because I think there's going to be a lot of discussion about those two items. Is C B fairly straight? D fairly straightforward, Mr. Wiley? I presume this must be you.
Yes, it's pretty short. I've only got 3 or 4 slides.
Okay, that's if you want to go ahead, we'll take that.
Sure. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I do have a short presentation.
I wish Jen was going to be here with us tonight.
Yeah. So what we're looking at tonight is an approval for a contract to revise the electronic system for the AV in Libke. As you all know, we've had issues with acoustics in the room, electrical glitches, just a lot of trouble with it. So I kind of wanted to just briefly review the history of the work we've done at the building since it was constructed rather recently. During construction, as you all remember, it was during the pandemic. So we ran into a lot of supply chain issues obtaining the equipment that probably would have worked the best for the room. During that, to replace a digital sound processor to remove echo cancellation that we noticed during construction was already occurring. We substituted that DSP again to improve online streaming for audio, and all of that during construction and planning. The pandemic broke out, and we needed to revise it to add hybrid meetings. After construction was complete, we did some further work, reprogrammed the DSP, and corrected some control panel glitches that were causing issues. I don't know if you remember, we had a lot of feedback problems with the Zoom function within the room. The audio was rather poor. So we corrected that. Even more recently, we revised how the hybrid meeting works in the room so that we don't have two computers running simultaneously. We can operate everything from where I'm sitting out front. And we also replaced the Dias mics with the conference stations in an effort to improve the audio pickup from the commissioners. In our latest revision, we identified some further issues that we can address to improve things. The main thing was the acoustics. We did an analysis of rooms acoustics to determine how much work we would need to do. They determined that there was a 3-second reverberation time at vocal frequencies. And I'm not familiar with this unit of measurement, but apparently it's akin to a concert hall where you would have a choir singing. For a meeting space, you want that to be 1 second. So basically, when sound gets up into the ceiling, it takes 3 seconds for it to stop bouncing, and we need that to be less than 1. There was some other DSP programming issues. If you've noticed, when folks will get a little bit close to the microphones and you hear that loud popping noise, apparently that's a programming function issue, and so that can be worked on and corrected. The control panel that we currently have is rather limited, so we have certain modes, and that prevents from doing customized setups, say having one television showing one thing, a different television showing something else. That's all possible with the equipment we have. It's just not programmed to allow us to do that. The other is analog audio wiring. This can all be converted over to digital so that there's less crosstalk between the signals and there's less issues with somebody bumping something and the wire becoming frayed and disconnected. If that was all converted over to digital, it would be more reliable and just better overall. The camera cabling that runs the cameras up above the gray area, the spec for the wiring was incorrect, so that needs to be corrected. That'll improve signal quality. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but in one camera, we actually run it at a lower resolution so that the signal can get back to the AV room, so that would be corrected. The speakers themselves in the room, the white ones around the wall, they're pointed currently kind of down and towards the crowd. They actually, there's better speakers out there that can focus the sound towards the public seating area and less reverberation up in the ceiling. So those would be replaced. And it overall just reduce the complexity of the system. The other thing that I think is probably one of the most exciting updates that would happen if we approve this would be replacement of the staff level micros. So those would be improved for a wireless function that allows us to move the tables around where the staff sit, accommodating up to 16 people. So that would enable us to have, for example, urban renewal budget committee meetings in that space. With everyone having their own, which is something we frankly have not had the capability of doing. And just improve the flexibility of the control panel. So that would involve replace DSP, the wireless microphones, reprogramming the control surfaces, Speakers would also be added behind the dais for folks sitting behind the dais to improve the sound back there, and overall just improving the speakers. This contract that we're proposing to approve tonight is in conjunction with a separate contract for the installation of acoustic panels in the ceiling near the back of the room. That's separate from this contract, so it would be in addition to. I just wanted to bring that up since it's related and have all the information available to you. One thing that has not been included in this scope is the addition of HVAC mufflers. So there's technology that can go inside of the ducting. It's kind of like a glass pack if you're used to automotive terms. It has like fiberglass. It reduces the sound of the HVAC system on the ceiling, on the roof. It has been noted as a concern, but it would require extensive remodeling, tearing down walls, ceilings, replacing large sections of the ducting. So we had chosen not to pursue that at this time and see how far we can get without doing that. But I just want to bring it up as something that in the future, if this isn't enough, for example, we could pursue that as well. With that, we would just ask for your approval for this contract and see if you have any feedback.
Are there any questions? Well, I will say that I do notice when the HVAC comes on, I notice that it does diminish the ability for us to hear the people in the audience, which is why I'm telling them to get closer to the mic and speak up. Because when it comes on, I mean, it's not insurmountable. It's basically, for me, it's just annoying because, they're coming off as when it goes, it's hard to hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Frank.
Guess all I'll say about this one is it sticks and crawl. And I know we're years down the road, and I imagine the original vendors have been paid in full. And I don't know if there's any opportunity to make a recovery, and there's probably not. But it's been a long battle. We owe it to our community to be able to hear what goes on there. That just got away from us and it never improved. And I just don't know why we didn't get what we needed. I've heard the explanation. And then that begs the question, how are we going to evaluate this as a successful operation? Can we do it? Can we measure an incremental improvement after this work is done? And I hope we can. And when you start talking about mufflers in the air ventilation system, hopefully we don't have to go there, because then I start thinking about what does that entail and having to keep those those things clean over a period of time, because that might be ongoing maintenance. So we'll do this incrementally. I hate every moment of it, but we owe it to the community to be able to hear what transpires within confines of. And that's about all I'll say. Mainly a disappointment that it took this long, and I appreciate the work we're doing to try to get it correct. So thank you for that.
I don't think anybody disagrees. I think, again, we got Shanghai COVID, and to me that we just moved back to 625 Center Street, that it would be better in terms of being able to hear and everything. And I said, well, that's not something we've considered, but it could be considered. Mike or Rocky or Adam, you have anything you want to add to this?
No, I just agree with everything Commissioner O'Donnell said.
No, I don't think we disagree. All right, motion. This is when you guys do not speak up.
Maybe
Please
we did. You didn't hear us.
I hear just fine. There's no problem with the acoustics in here. The problem I have with this, the computer plug outlet for me to plug in this laptop does not work with the plug that I have. So I'm sitting over in a corner with a wall socket.
We can fix that for $22,000.
Okay, come on down. Let's have a motion, please.
I'll move to approve the contract award to Delta AV.
There a second?
Second.
Okay, I'll second it. Mr. Wiley.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Reluctantly, aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
and Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, do you want to take B or C? I can tell you, I have a lot to say about C. I have a lot to say about B.
Quite honestly, I'll say this about the selection of candidates. I wish we were doing it in person because you get a better read on the individual sitting across the table from them. That being said, here we are and we've got something to do. So let's proceed.
I agree. I should have suggested that we put them on the meeting by phone if we needed to talk to them. That's something I thought about after we already sent the packet out. So I apologize for that. All right, so let's take item B, which is selection of volunteers for DMO Creation Task Force. Do we have any comments about any of the applicants? Anything? So I'll start. I'm just going to go down the row here. I'm going to start with Commissioner Morrow.
All I'll say to keep it quick on my end is that the three applicants who stand out to me are Abel Lee, Charles Gallia, and Holly Fort Miller. Those are the three applicants that stood out to me and that I would support moving forward.
Okay, Mr. Wiley, can you keep track of that? I'm now balancing everything on my lap.
Would you state those again? Abel Lee?
Yes, Charles Gallia and Holly Fort Miller. I think they stood out the most in terms of their prior involvement in economic development and tourism. And I felt like, unlike some of the others, that there was more substance to what was answered in the limited application.
Mr. Mitchell.
I agree with Charles Gallia and Holly Fort Miller. My third choice was Selena Jones.
Okay, Rocky.
The top two for me were Charles Gallia.
It has to be three.
Well, I'm telling you my top two.
Okay.
Charles Gallia and Holly Fort Miller. I did write down Abel Lee and Selena Jones, but I think that the two I mentioned at the forefront are the ones that I for sure want to see.
Hey, Mr. O'Donnell.
Well, I went through them a number of times. Mr. Gallia, I was fine with. Holly, whatever her last name is. And I lean towards Selena Jones.
Okay. And my picks are the same as Mr. O'Donnell's, Holly, Charles, and Selena.
So it seems like we have 5 for Mr. Gallia, 5 for Miss Fort Miller, and then it looked like we had 4 for Miss Selena Jones. Yeah, but then Mr. Lee had 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
But at a minimum, you had a solid 3 for Miss Selena Jones.
Okay, so I think that's what we'll go with. I'd also like to strongly recommend that we have Mr. O'Donnell be the City Commission liaison to this initial task force. I think he has the fortitude to herd people to get things done, and we'll get the information that we need to our DMO consultants in the time frame that they've specified. And I think Frank is the best person to do that. So if you will, we can have a motion to that effect. We can move this forward.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Mitchell. Let's have the roll call.
Just to clarify the vote, we'd be nominating Gallia, Fort Miller, Jones, and Commissioner O'Donnell as the commission representative.
Yes, you
Commissioner
can call him
Mike Mitchell.
Professor too.
Sorry. Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
and Mayor Denise McGriff.
Aye.
Motion
So
passes.
Mr. Conkle, let me ask just one thing. So let's say, for instance, that one of them has to drop out. Should we have a fourth option? One of the candidates said that time frame was I don't know if it's an issue, but I'm just thinking in my back of my head that maybe we need to have a possible backup. But we up at another meeting once we find out that information. Is that okay?
Yeah, if somebody drops out, we'll bring it back with who's applied. And
Okay.
it seems like it would be able, but it's up to y'all. We'll bring it back.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, let's
Well, it
move
looks
on.
like we had looks like Commissioner Marl had a question.
Oh, Mr. Morrow.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, what is the timeline? I know we went over this when we talked about it, the timeline to complete this startup task force. I'm just thinking about the remainder of Commissioner O'Donnell's term and whether that goes into the following year, if there's someone else, and if not, then that's perfectly fine.
Nope, it's supposed to be done before January.
Perfect.
That was the plan. That was what we talked about at the meeting. They wanted stuff wrapped up by December so they could file everything in January. So it is perfect time with Commissioner O'Donnell's term.
Excellent. Thank you.
And do you see his arm being twisted there?
Actually, I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Mayor McGriff,
Yes, sir.
can I make a suggestion?
Please do.
Assuming that if somebody had to drop out, we wouldn't go through the application process again. We would work off this list of candidates. I'd suggest, why don't we nominate Abel Lee as an alternate to fill in if somebody has to drop out, rather than have the delay of having to come back to this again?
I am not prepared quite to do that. I was still doing some research on him and I didn't quite get it done before I had to jump in the car. So
Well, I will
I
make
don't
a
have-
motion.
So I just, if we have to bring it back, we bring it back for one meeting and we could do it very quickly.
Well, I will move that we nominate Abel Lee as an alternate should someone drop out.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Wiley.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
No.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Let's hold on a second. Where's my notes? What was the background
He was a caterer.
on the? Okay.
He's in catering.
It's important to read his qualifications and where he operated at. Most of his work, I think, was done in the Montevilla neighborhood
Yes.
in Portland, and I'll just leave it at that. It's up to the individual commissioner to cast a vote.
Well, in the fairness of time and not having to go back to it, and the fact that that person came up, and I don't know that I want to reopen it to a whole new group of people, I'll say aye.
It wouldn't be. We just go from the current list.
Well, I know, but then there'd be no reason to hold it
I know.
if we're going from that basic list. So I
Commissioner Adam Marl.
Aye.
And Mayor Denise McGriff.
No.
Motion passes.
All right, let's move on to my favorite topic. We have Assistant City Manager Alex Rains on deck. This is your item, I believe.
Yes. Mayor and
I'm sorry.
Commissioners. Oh, ready for me to start? Okay.
Yeah, I just said I'm sorry. Apologizing.
Oh, okay. All right. Yes, Mayor and Commissioners. So upon the previous Parks Director's departure from the city, I did step in to help us with the final negotiations of this agreement. We also have the attorney here this evening, if there's additional questions that he might be able to answer as well. The owner of Sportcraft, Eric Dye, has signed off on the agreement as it currently stands. The agreement is attached to the packet this evening, as well as the RMLS listing for the floating home that is in the agreement that he will sell. Just some kind of quick highlights from the agreement. The new term, it would expire on November 30th, 2029. We'd be looking at 3% per year annual increases to the lease fee. The security deposit of $97,000 would be retained. Signage be able to be upgraded by the city. We would be bearing the cost of the signs themselves, but the licensee would then install them at his cost. Annual sign inspections would be completed. And the third floating home, as I mentioned, is currently for sale. He'd be able to do a month-to-month lease until December 31st, 2025, although I believe it's already vacant, but I'm not 100% certain on that. And then it must be removed by March 31st, 2026. And then the agreement as it stands expires November 30th, 2024.
Are there any questions, comments? Implied silence.
It looks to me like most of the payments to be made to the city are going to be held almost in an escrow account. And we take those payments out of that correctly. And I see that the gentleman is making an effort to sell the floating home, giving him a year to do that, which sounds fair. I know that his end, the interest was more in a longer rental agreement, which I thought was going to be linked to his commitment to invest during the course of this agreement in improvements, but I don't see any of that here. So this is a fairly simplified agreement in my mind, and it's a 5-year agreement. I didn't see anything troubling, but I'm open to listening, and if anyone else caught something I didn't, open to discussion.
Rocky, Adam, or Mike?
Well, as I recall, this lines up with what we asked for.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that the first 4 items line up with what we had talked about. We had talked about that if there was performance compliance, that we would consider doing it for 5 years rather than in the beginning when they wanted it for 5 years. And we said no, because we didn't have any assurance that they were actually going to follow through on everything they were supposed to do. We have a standardized sign that we like to have in our parks, and I think it's about time this one got upgraded and it didn't look like everybody who's down there tacked whatever they wanted onto it, which is what it looks like now. So that will be a nice addition and make it look a little more professional instead of kind of tacky. And, I'm being very blunt here. My big issue is still with the, let me get to the annual site inspection. So I am hoping that although it's written in that it's annual, I think we need to be going down there randomly more than 1 year, just to I think our operations people are doing that, because I think if they don't know we're coming, to just be out there making sure things happen. And that's been my concern from day one, that we had been doing that, but not really documenting it. So my computer's telling me that something is unstable, but it's still there. And then, of course, the bee in my bonnet is about that floating home. I guess the question I had, and I wish I had remembered to ask you sooner, Alex, is he has known for quite some time that we wanted that out of there. So when did he engage with when did he start the listing? Because I think he's asking for my opinion is only that he's asking for too much time, and he's had, how much time have we been working on negotiating this contract? And we were very adamant from day one that thing had to go. I would have started listing it right away, because I think he should have known he had no chance of us allowing him to keep it. And
So
do you know?
Oh, sorry. I believe when I had looked at when I looked at the RMLS listing, when he initially sent it, I think it was saying it had been on the market at least 37 days. And he gave me that document about a month ago. So my guesstimate is maybe it's been on the market about 40 days, give or take.
The listing date on the listing date on the agreement is August 7th.
Okay, yeah.
This year,
August 7th, 2024.
Right.
Yes.
yeah, I will buy whatever you guys vote, but I do not support giving him a year. I think he needs to get it out of there by March of 2025, and he can list it on a month-to-month basis for now, and then it's got to go. I just do not want it there for another year. He was not supposed to have it there in the first place, and it just really bugs me that he is trying to stretch this out. And it also bugs me that our licenses are being unfair to them, and I'm very disappointed that they are doing that.
Not as trouble.
So that's all I really have to say about it.
Okay, I don't see any financial exposure to the city because it looks to me, if I understand the agreement correctly, that the monthly payments are being taken out of monies retained by the city. Is that correct?
I believe so. Bill, is that, I just want to double check, is that accurate?
To a point, the city currently has about 50 years.
Right.
At the end of this license agreement will be $97,000. So it's, round figures $150,000, which is essentially the first 2 years. The third, fourth, and fifth years would be payment from the licensee to the city.
Okay, and if there's
I apologize, we're going to return part of the security deposit, so it's really 1.5 years, and then it will be out of pocket.
Is there a default clause in there if at the end of that, the prepay that,
There is. It's the same termination. This is an amendment, so I don't have the full agreement in front of our provisions that allow us to terminate, and there are consequences of that termination.
whether this be accurate information or not, my understanding is the problem with that floating home is his footprint is so large that in the attempt to find another place for it to land.
Yeah, another birth.
And I don't know if that's correct or not. That's just side information I heard. I would have liked to have seen it listed earlier myself because we.
I did too. I heard that.
There's an ongoing point of contention, so I do agree with the mayor on that point. But I'm not going to let that get in the way. I think it gives us, and it's a month-to-month agreement. And at the end of it, if it goes a year and it doesn't happen, whether he's got a birth or not, it's got to go. That's the way I read this thing.
Yeah, that's what I think that was written. I just wish it would go sooner.
I'll go with the will of the commission.
Well, you've heard me articulate my reasons when we were working through the license agreement about that particular facility.
And they're valid, Mayor. They're valid reasons.
So what's your pleasure, gentlemen?
Question.
So Alex, they are going down more than once a year, right?
Are you talking about for the annual site inspections?
Yes, I mean, there's an official one, but we are keeping tabs on this.
To my knowledge, yes, but I will definitely, I made a note. I will back on about the frequency.
Freezing up, breaking up.
Okay.
I'm not able to hear you.
2 months ago, just because.
Oh, there we go. I will.
Yeah, sorry. It says my internet connection is unstable, but it's plugged in. Yeah, I could hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Rocky, you've got your hand up.
Yes. So the question was to what date? I'm reading the signage piece of it. When we talked about it, it was parking signage, but it and the mayor, of course, mentioned some of the other signage. So do we know exactly what signage we're talking about?
This, my understanding was that this was dealing with on-site signage related to parking so that it was consistent with city signage that we have throughout the city. This is not dealing with the signage that's up by the upper parking visible from 9090. This was dealing with internal site signage that we have standard language, color, design for that we were going to put on the site.
Are we going to get around to dealing with the big sign?
Not as part of this, no.
Not as part of this, but I mean, just in general, like I said, it looks terrible. It reflects poorly on our
It has a sign permit. It's been up there for years. That's not part of the agreement, no.
Yeah, but it's not pretty. All right, let's have a motion. Let's put it on the list.
I'll move to approve the amendment to sportscraft lease agreement.
Second.
It's a license, not a lease. Can you change to say license? It's not a lease.
Amendment. I move to approve the amendment to the sportscraft license agreement, was what it says on the agenda.
Second.
Is there a second? Second by Mr. Mitchell.
Commissioner Mike Mitchell,
Aye.
Commissioner Frank O'Donnell,
Aye.
Commissioner Rocky Smith,
Aye.
Commissioner Adam Marl,
Aye.
and Mayor Denise McGriff.
Because I want the Sportcraft landing boat to go away sooner.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch your vote, Mayor Griff.
I said it is no.
No.
Because I want it's no. Yeah. All right. Any communications, Mr. Conkle?
No, not tonight. Thank you.
None? Mike shaking his head, Adam shaking his head. I will just add one thing. We did have our city visitors in town on Monday. They came to City Hall and they were greeted by myself and Mr. Conkle and Mr. Lehman, and a good time at the dinner, was a barbecue, and they all learned how to line dance. And I will say his thing, he did pretty well. Not too bad in terms of a line dancer. And the kids, of course, loved it. So I think the whole event was a success, and they had us to keep that on your radar. So there's nothing else. Are we ready to turn? Oh, Frank, yes, you have your hand up.
I don't know if the internet will continue to function, but we oftentimes lose sight of things. I know we've been pursuing the use of the dock for commercial river traffic. Mr. Conkle brought me up to date that he's made a second inquiry of the State Marine Board. They have not, if I'm correct, they have not elucidated us on their responses as to why they would have difficulty with us proceeding. And as Commissioner Mitchell found out, our agreement with the State Marine Board has long ago expired. So let's not lose track of that, and let's keep it moving. And that's all I want to say. Thanks.
No, thank you. Is there any further business? All right, being no further business, we are officially adjourned. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you for accommodating all of us on this Zoom meeting. It was remarked by Mr. O'Donnell that we felt like we were back at COVID, but thank goodness we aren't. So I will see you all very soon, and I'll see the three of you tomorrow. So thank you so much.
Safe travel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, Linda.
Good night.